Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our SSDVE February webinar. So for this month, we are focusing on empowering and engaging parents and caregivers to support students with disability in virtual learning environments. And we are really excited to have our February recurring guest panelists back today, Dr. David Bateman, who is local here in Pennsylvania, and Dr. Sean Smith. He will join us soon, tuning in all the way from Kansas. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Bateman to kick us off. Thank you, Dr. Bateman.
Thank you, Ethan. I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys, and I appreciate what you're doing. I'm normally a professor at Shippensburg, but this semester I'm working in Oregon. But I am in Pennsylvania as we speak, and for the very first time this past week, we saw our backyard. So I'm really excited that this may be happening to you, and I'm looking forward to warm temperatures. We're just going to go through this really quickly, and I'm going to talk about the role that I've played, why I think this is so very important, and what we need to talk about this. I was a hearing officer for many years. I work with school districts that have been sued, so I'm just going to kind of go through this and talk about this really extensively. But I also want to talk about it as a parent. As a parent of one child who had an IEP, one child who had a 504 plan, I understand the role and how important this is and what we need to do as a part of this. So without further ado, and you will have access to these slides. They'll be in the shared notes document. I've already forwarded to Dr. Pan so that they're there for you if things can help with this. But I really want to emphasize, because I haven't been part of a due process hearing in about 3 hours. So I'm on break right now. But one of the things about this is, and I really do mean this, is communication with parents is vital. And I can't emphasize that enough, that these are important team members and we need to treat them as important team members, not just as a line on the IEP that we have to fill out. These are very, very important team members. And I want to just reiterate that and extend that, because so much of the due process hearings that I'm involved in, I've been involved, just totaled it up, since COVID started, I've been involved in 104 due process hearings. And that's the last 23 months. And if you haven't had one, this is my gift to you. If you would like one to come to your school district, let me know. There's my email contact. We can get a due process hearing in your district so that you can share, you can spread the joy and the love of what goes on as a part of this. I know people. So we can get this as something that could be something you can participate in too. But I want to say that most of it relates to communication and making sure that we are fully engaging and talking with and explaining, so that there are no surprises and that we have a team that talks about this and engages in this. So I want to emphasize this. Okay. So before we go any further, I just want to look at this, and I want to look at we're talking about working with parents. And so I'm going to talk broadly about what I've experienced just in the litigation world that I live in over the past couple of months. And I am heavily involved on some major lawsuits. One class action lawsuit, just finished a class action lawsuit, helped building the case for a class action lawsuit in another state right now. So I'm heavily involved in this, but I just want to say working with parents is something that we all need to take very seriously. But start with this. Look at this from their view. And I want to take perspective, because too often we get so locked into our position as an educator, as about our role, what we can do to make our lives easier. And I'll reiterate this later, but one of the things we need to convey to parents is that we want to work with them to provide appropriate supports for their child. And we want to be, it's a team thing. We're working this together. It's a shared village. We're all in this together kinds of things. Now, yeah, we get to go home at 3 as educators. But some of these parents, that's when their tough times really start. And so we have to think about this is they want what's best for their child. Now, our legal obligation is not to do what's best. Some of you maybe heard me say that in different venues, but what we need to do is work with them to help move things forward. And so one thing we can be as heartfelt as possible, but look at it from their view. Next, be stable. Be stable. And I can't tell you, I come from a family of educators. My dad was my superintendent of schools. My daughter's about to become a special education teacher. My wife teaches ESL. I mean, my sister's a teacher. It's what we do. We are educators. And I can't tell you how proud I am of how educators have been the stable lives for many of these kids for the past 23 months. We have reached out over and above what people are aware of. I don't think you realize how many stories I've heard about educators Zooming or using kids' hotspots to work with them at times that aren't normal times, just because that's the time that's convenient, or they have one hotspot available and the other kids logged on, or they can't participate because the TV's on in the back of the room. Variety of things. What we have done over the past 23 months, yes, it's been tough. This is not what many of us signed up for, but we have been a stable force for these kids, and we need to continue to be this. I know it's hard. I'm well aware that it's hard. Life sucks with what we've been going through. Hopefully it's going to get better. Just imagine where we were 23 months ago, just 23 months ago. Life has changed rather dramatically and things like this. We are all affected by this, but we need to realize that we have been a stable force in what's going on. So what we need to continue as a part of this is collaborate with parents, and work with them. So that we can be the assistance and part of what we need to emphasize and help with where we are with this and provide them the supports. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. But I'm going to move forward on this because I got some tips I want to get to as a part of this, and some things that I've learned just from being part of contentious IEP meetings, which are the only kind that I get to go to now. I don't get to go to the meetings where everyone's happy and sings Kumbaya at the end. I only go to the meetings where tends to be attorneys on both sides, like I was this morning. Work to collaborate with the parents. Work to collaborate with the parents and just understand that we're trying to do what's right for these kids. We're not trying to cause problems. We're trying to help move forward. It's interesting about this because there's some of the cases that I've been involved in just in the past 2 weeks where the kids were not making progress. And parents are saying, no, it's because the child has a disability or there's a problem with this. The disability is just the starter part of the conversation. And I want to emphasize that the disability is just the starter part of the conversation. And we can't use that or hold that up to say that we can't provide services to the kid, because that's the first, it's not good for the child. And second, it's not legally defensible. So I mean this literally, is that we need to do what we can to work with the kids and work with the parents and understand the disability is just the starter point. What we're going to do is we're going to become creative about how we're going to provide supports, how we're going to work with these kids and move them forward as a part of this. Okay. So next thing, work with them to help with the kid as moving distractions. Because many of these kids are at home, they're being distracted. I observed a lesson. What day is today? Today's Thursday. I observed a lesson yesterday. It's starting to run together when you work in your attic. I love my attic with the skylights, but when they were snow covered, I was pissed, as it was a few weeks ago. But I share this with you is when you observe these things, you observe these kids, and these kids are trying their best to pay attention. They're trying their best, they're in a room where there's a lot of foot traffic, or there's a TV on the background, there's a radio, or the amount of kids who have triggered their Alexas while they're on Zoom calls. It's amazing how many times Alexa has responded to different things. And same thing, increasingly, I got an Apple Watch about 3 weeks ago. We're still new in our relationship, but it's amazing how many times Siri jumps in when I don't want her to. So I've changed her voice just so I can be highlighted. I'm actually hiding my wrist behind so I don't trigger that while I'm talking here. But work with the parents to try to move these distractions. Try to move these distractions so kids can make progress. But keep this in mind as we talk about this, all right? So the next thing, all right, and this is an IEP tip. Is when I lead IEP meetings, and I'm increasingly with all the districts that I get a pleasure of working with, is what I do is I want to emphasize is that I always assign at the end of the meeting, we assign someone who is going to revisit the parents 5 days after the IEP meeting. And I really do mean this. Is assign someone who's going to contact the parents, because think about this, IEP meetings for parents can tend to be stressful. Okay, we're one parent, maybe an advocate. I tend to go sometimes with these, but there's a whole bunch of people sitting around these rooms, and parents sometimes feel stressed, or that they have to make a decision right there about an important fact of their child's life. And think about when you've been in a stress situation. Best analogy I can make is think about the fact when, like, if you've ever been in an argument, and then you're in an argument and then you roll over at 2 a.m. and you say, I should have said that. What we have to do is we have to think about when the parents decompress from the stress we put them in on these meetings. And I'm not saying put parents in stress. I got tips from how to reduce the stress. But when we put them in stress, when they decompress, reach out to them 4, 5, 6 days later and say, is there anything else that you have, any questions that you formed, comments you have, anything that I can be of assistance about this? Keep that relationship on communication going. Because the best thoughts that they have maybe 3 days after the meeting, not when they're sitting there feeling stressed. But get your team to do that every single time. Because what that does is that it shows that we're reaching out, but it's better for the parents and it's better for the kid. So keep that in mind as we talk about this, okay? So what else? So tips, all right? Just basic things, all right? Verify parents are willing to receive notices by email. There are some parents they can't do that. Or they have 4 gazillion email mail in their email messages in their email machine, and they can't get to what's going on. Yeah, you have noticed that you sent it, but you have no idea that they received it. Think about this. Verify email addresses for both parents before notifying them of the meeting by email so that you have some sense that they understand what's going on. Make sure that you invite both parents to participate in virtual meetings. That you would get, so just as much as possible, get the parents to participate and get the parents to be there for what's going on about this, but really, truly get the parents involved and listen to the parents, okay? So next thing, I got another thing on parents real fast. Document all efforts to accommodate both of their schedules. And what's interesting about this is increasingly districts are having to reach out to parents who do not have ability to participate in meetings during the normal 8 to 3 that we often schedule these meetings. So you need to document that you're doing this and pay attention to this and pay attention to this as part of this, okay? And keep that in mind. But ask for both parents for their input. And I mean this literally, as they may have different ideas to consider. So one tip that I have, another IEP tip, is I start every single IEP meeting that I have with parents with the statement and phrase, parents, tell me about your child. What that does is that grounds us to remind us that we're here to talk about a child. We hear about the parents' emotions, hear what's going on. We have a child who has a name that we really need to pay attention to, as opposed to the child's name here kind of thing. Really two things. The other thing is sometimes parents don't provide you information that can be used in the class part of the IEP. And so what I do is when parents tell us about their child, we write that stuff down into the present level section. Because parents don't often know, because very rarely do we train parents or work with parents about what we want as part of a present level statement. So when we ask, can you give us some information from the present level statement? They don't know if you want 1 sentence or 700 words. So they shut down. So this is a way of getting good information, but it grounds us. The best example to this, some of you maybe heard me tell the story before in another venue, but I was in a meeting, this was in September, right before 2.25 years ago. Good IEP. I've been brought in by the district. We've reviewed it. It was a kid with 3rd grade girl with pretty significant problems relating to reading. I'd gone through the IEP with a fine-tooth comb. We were good to go. Things like this. We sit there. All of us are gathered around the table. Parent, tell us about your child. Parent says, I know we're here to talk about reading. I know reading is the most important part that we need to address. But my daughter has no friends. No one participates with her. No one wants to be around her. She doesn't want to come to school anymore. That changed the focus of the meeting. That changed the focus, as it should have. So we spent the next half hour, 45 minutes paying attention to what we can do to have more cooperative learning activities, more group activities, things like this. And luckily, we were well within the timeline. So we deferred the IEP to talk about that 2 weeks later. We brought back 2 weeks later, after the teacher had done all these implementation of cooperative group activities, the mom said, my daughter now has someone who sits with her at lunch. She now wants to come to school. There's someone who wants to play with her on the playground. Let's talk about reading now. We would only did that because we asked the parent for information. That daughter, that girl, I checked in with the girl. She's doing fine now, but I checked that girl needed something very different than what we were offering at that time. And by listening to the parents and paying attention to you need to understand this and pay attention to where we are with this. Wait, there's more. Parent participation, okay? Parents may need accommodations. And we automatically say, here's the Zoom machine, let's go through this, or Google Hangout, or whatever. Hearing impairments, visual impairments, stress, time requirements. There's a lot of things that we have to pay attention to. I live in Carlisle. Those have been across. I know it's a beautiful town. It's a wonderful place. But I share this with you is many of our parents that we're interacting with in our area work at Amazon, and they have to get off. They have to get off the warehouse floor. They have to log in, participate, and then get back to their place while eating their lunch within a half an hour. And so we have to think about the time requirements they have as a part of this. We want them, so sometimes we're having to hold the IEP meetings over multiple days and pay attention to this. Some of you are up by Trexler Town and understand all the parents who work in the warehouses. My son raised up in T-Town, so I understand, I like that place. But I understand this is you have all these issues with where these have these warehouses, you have the same thing with time requirements. So you have to think about this as also. Next, parent participation in meetings where English is not their native language. You have to think about what we can do to provide the procedural safeguards in their native language. Luckily, PDE has a wealth of documents of many different languages where parents can get their documents in their native language so they can understand what's going on. So the procedural safeguards notice is available in different languages, and you should be able to access that. And so we can help you get access to that if you're having problems. But I think last count, it was like 18 or 19 different languages. And that could be a drinking game for you. Name 18 or 19 different languages. But what's interesting about that is what you have to think about this is make sure that the parents are fully participating in where we are with this, okay? So I'm gonna move on to more virtual meetings. Dr. Smith's going to tag more and talk about this also, but virtual meetings and problems with FERPA. All right. So, and I mean this is that we have to think about what we're describing and what we're doing as a part of this. So when we talk about virtual meetings, it's the new norm. And it's actually, some of us become pretty conversant with this. We've become pretty conversant with the Zoom machine, and we're working with this. We can get people. In fact, we can bang out meetings like this because we can log off, log on to another meeting real fast, and we're getting good at this. When I teach my college classes, I don't like it because everyone just, all right, we're done. Everyone just walks out. Normally, I'd have conversations with people before and after meetings. It's kind of strange, but it's the new normal, and sometimes it's more efficient. And sometimes parents they don't have to get child coverage. They don't have to walk into a building where they may not have had positive experiences themselves. So we have to think about there are some positives to this. But virtual meetings, yes, there are pluses and minuses to them. But what we have to think about is parents' anxiety with this. Okay, and I mean this. Is parents may have anxiety related because it's now increasingly becoming a typical process of how we do things, but they're overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed with where we are with this. They're not sure, we understand where we are with this. We're not sure how the teaching is going with this. And so, I mean, I've done a lot of interviews with people over the Zoom, and then you meet them face to face, and there's people are very different. My son is very busy, and he works in the cryptocurrency world, and he's been working for a year and a half in the cryptocurrency world. He may be richer than all of us combined. I don't know, but he says it's legal. What's interesting about this, his closest colleague he'd been working with closely, he met face to face the other day for the first time. This person is 7 foot tall. He had no idea because he'd only seen the person in a Zoom window. So he just kept looking up, 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 up. So it's really interesting part of this process. Pay attention to this. But here's just some basic things with virtual meetings about IEPs. Make sure that you get a draft to the parents as early as possible. So at least I recommend that with all the districts that I work with, that we get a draft to the parents about a week ahead of time. Even if you don't have 100% draft, get an 80% draft. Get an 80%. Get what you can to the parents so that you have something for them to review. And then when you get there, you understand. They understand what's going on. They understand where we are with this. You understand what's going on. When you're going through the meeting, make sure the pages are clearly marked, so we can all refer to things like this. But these are just some basic things that you have to think about. Use the technology, practice the technology, use the technology, things like this. Make sure that we all can see each other as much as possible. If you're going to be recording that, what are you going to do with that recording? And where are you going to keep that recording? And where is it going to be part of the child's files? And some of these suckers are they take a long time to download from Zoom. So keep this in mind as we talk about this. But periodic reminders, remind people as a part of this. I mean, there are a lot of these things are things you know, but I'm just kind of reminding you about this. Periodic reminders that we need to keep people, that only one person talks at a time, that we share information, we're talking about specific papers, but also, and this is one that I can't emphasize enough, since we're all Zooming, we need to make sure that we're engaging in professional behavior, all right? I watched a teacher the other day take a pair of tweezers and was clipping the hairs from inside his nose. And it was, I can't do that without a mirror. He was truly impressive. I don't know what he was looking at, but it became, that's all I focused on. I can't tell you what that kid's present levels are. I can't tell you what the goal is we're doing as a part of that transition plan. But I know that that teacher got a lot of hairs out that nose. So engage in professional behavior because you're on camera. You are on camera. So if you're like, I mean, I sore my ear, I itched a lot. Someone did a frequency count in my class the other day about how many times I itched my ear. I'm taping my hands to my legs next time I work with that class so that they don't see those kinds of things. But engage in professional behavior as a part of this. But like I said before, always follow up. Always follow up with the parents as a part of this, okay? Some of you maybe heard me also say this in other videos. I'm happy to say it again. Okay. Words to use as a part of your IEP teams when you're working with parents. These are 3 phrases that I absolutely want you to use. Not only use them, but mean it when you use them. Straight, I really do. I don't just say, yeah, we fully consider that and not mean it. Okay. Don't make sure that you fully consider every single thing the parents ask for. Make sure you fully consider everything from the parents' report. Make sure you fully consider everything the parents say when they said that their child no longer needs to wear a mask, regardless of who says it. Make sure that you fully consider everything. Second thing, whenever you're talking about things, you provide the services. What we're providing for your child is appropriate based on the child's needs. And last, make sure it's individualized to that child. And I mean this literally. It's got to be individualized to this child. So a lot of my due process hearings, we settle because parents are really, they're hot on the label that the child receives. The label for me is not a fighting term. I don't really care what the child's label is because we individualize the services based on the present level statement. The label, that's a bean counting thing for me. We're going to provide services based on the individual needs for the child. So these are words you need to use and you need to mean it when you use them. And I really do mean this. Use these words appropriately. But words not to use, here are some words not to use. We want to do what's best for your child. Nope, that's not our obligation, folks. Our obligation is to do what's appropriate. So if you have anyone who says, we're going to do what's best for your child, you kick them under the table, all right? You have my permission, all right? If you need me to sign a notice, I'll do it for you. Second thing, we are not going to, our goal is, our obligation is not to maximize a child's education, or not to maximize a child's participation. Our obligation is for a child to make progress. Another word you don't say is no. Okay? And just think about this. You can say it after you've fully considered what the parents have asked for. Don't just automatically say no. Just say, all right, let's consider this, because there may be a nugget of truth or reason why we need to do that. So you fully consider what's going on. You can say no later. Yeah, absolutely. I'll couch you on that if you need how to say these things. But I bet it's only after you fully considered. Next, we don't do that here. Okay. Well, if you don't do that here, you got to do it somewhere because the continuum of services has to be made available to all kids. I don't care where they are. I'm working in some profoundly rural areas out west right now. And there's services, there's some kids where there's not services for 200 miles. They still have to provide the services. And so I was on the phone with someone from Montana today, a school district of two people, yes. And it's impressive what they have. They have way more cows than they have people in this district. So keep that in mind. All right, last point. Let me check with the superintendent if we can provide that. It's an IEP team decision. It's an IEP team decision. And I speak of that. My father is executive director of the Urban Superintendents Association of America. He thinks he knows a lot because he's a retired superintendent himself. Superintendents don't always know a lot. So it's an IEP team decision as a part of that. And I say that to his face. So keep that in mind. All right. So next, meeting with parents. Okay. Meeting with parents and various things. All right. Keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. Some basic tips about this, just from things I observed. There is no small stuff. There is no small stuff. And I mean this literally. Impressions matter. How you phrase things, how you do things, how you interact with things is you need to pay attention to this. Okay? You need to address this. All right. Second, do we need a different setting to meet with the parents? Over lunch, at a PTA meeting, after school? We don't always need to be at the same table. Do we just need a different setting? I'm going to start talking faster because I've had sugar. So what's interesting about this is you need to pay attention to what we can do to get the parents involved. Wait, there's more. when you have parents on and face-to-face meetings, here's some basic tips. Okay? Have parking. Make sure there's parking available. Notify staff that this parent's coming in, as opposed to, I have no idea what the heck you're talking about. I get that all the time. Things like this. Have someone to greet the parents. Have someone walk them down the hall. Make sure that they have coffee, tea, and water. And make sure they don't sit in one of those kindergarten chairs. All right. Kindergarten chairs are great for 6-year-olds, but they're not good for a lot of parents. I had to do an IEP meeting a couple of weeks ago. I'm still pissed. All right, so things like that. So I want to share that with you as a part of this. Make sure that you provide these things, okay? Next, us versus them, okay? What we have to think about, it's not us versus them. It's us to talk about a team, to come up with a decision to provide services for a child. Talk about how we staff, how we talk to the staff about how we talk with the parents. Why I mean that is I was involved in a meeting a couple of years ago where every single time the parent said something, you're gonna have to look at me for this one, I apologize. Every single time the parent said something, one of the teachers went like this, like rolled her eyes and rolled her whole head. And in fact, I was having fun. I just kind of frequency count how many times the person was doing this, okay? But what I wanna share with you is, so I went out in the hall and I talked to that teacher. I said, don't ever do that again. Because that parent because you need to give the parent the information. You need to be there for the kid. You need to be there and not roll your eyes. So what I also do is I mandate every single one, when I'm in an IEP meeting, every single person takes notes. Every single person takes, and we take notes that can be shared with the parents later. So because you might, if you bring them up to the witness stand when you're testifying in due process hearing, yeah, they're shared, all right? So yeah, you can, and I want you to be able to reflect and be able to recall what's going on. Take notes. No playing a Sudoku, no playing Wordle, no grading, none of that stuff. You are there to take notes. It focuses us and reminds us what we're doing as a part of this. So take it seriously. The other thing is I make sure that we have the individuals who work with the kid at the meeting. I was working with a school district not too long ago where the PE teacher had a first period free. And so the PE teacher came to all the IEP meetings, okay? This is a PE teacher who didn't even know what this kid looked like or where this kid, or what this kid was doing, things like this. So I said, no, have the PE teacher go cover the class for a short period of time. So we have a teacher who understands what this kid looks like as a part of this. That meets the spirit and the letter of the law. So we have someone who's as a part of this. So keep that in mind as we talk about this, okay? Make sure parents know who everyone is. I attended an IEP meeting in another state where for one of my former students, and I'm sitting there at the IEP meeting. There was no introductions, no one talking to anyone. I just sat there very quietly. Then I started passing notes to the parent about saying, ask this, ask this, ask this. Finally, they've asked me who I was and they Googled me. It changed the dynamics rather dramatically. Don't do that. Make sure that you have someone who's a full participant and understand what's going on there. Avoid long titles, avoid acronyms, avoid education. We have jargon. We have jargon out the wazoo, and we have it from other places too. But you need to think about how to use appropriate language, because parents don't understand, is a 3.2 on Dibbles, is that good or bad? And just a little trivia thing. The person who authored Dibbles used to work for the CAIU and lived in Carlisle for a long time. Now lives in Oregon. Just a little trivia on this thing like this, but kind of do basic intros, okay? Have an agenda. Have an agenda of things that you need to cover. Wait, I got one more, okay? Do everything in your power to make sure the parents understand this is the most important meeting of the day. And I mean this. You get the opportunity / pleasure / painful experience to attend many dozens of IEP meetings. Parents have taken time from their life. They've taken time from their work. They've taken time from their child, time from their favorite shows, whatever. They've taken time to come into school. And for you to say, oh yeah, this is number 15 this week. Let's hurry up and get this. I can't wait to get outside. No. Give the parents the time, give parents the respect, and let them know that this is the most important meeting. This may be your 50th meeting this year. This is their one. Treat it as if it's their one. Make sure your team treats it as if their one. I mean this literally. Treat this as the one, and make sure that everyone treats it with that kind of respect. If you learn nothing else from me today, learn this, and please get this out to your team. And I do mean this literally, is that because one of the things, a lot of times parents file for mediation or due process because they want the school district's attention. Okay. And when you have a parent who files for mediation due process, yeah, they've got your attention. They feel like sometimes it feels like they got their hands around your neck. Every single time you talk to the parents, treat them with respect. Respect them, pay attention to them, listen to them, honor them. I can't tell you that. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay. One final thing, and I'm going to skip down. Okay. Skip down. As you can see, is I'm just going to bring this up real fast. Okay. As I told Dr. Pan, I was going to bring this up. In Pennsylvania, it's ESY season. All right. If you're not aware of this, you need to check your regulations. Okay. It's ESY determination season. By the end of this month, you need to make your ESY determinations. If you're looking for good guidance, just Google PDE ESY. The Teacher's Desk Reference has really good information for teachers about this, but you have to think about this. There's great statements about ESY criteria and targeted determinations, but you need to make your ESY determinations. It's great stuff, and I really can't emphasize this enough. Last thing, I surveyed my undergrads last semester. I'm on leave from Shippensburg, but usually I work at Shippensburg University. I surveyed my undergrads, a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds last semester, and who don't have a clue, by the way. I'm kind of scared about society. What's interesting about this is I asked them what their child was going to be like when they got older. I said, this doesn't obligate you to, stop, Siri. Well, this doesn't obligate you to having a child, but this is what they came up with, all right? And you can see this is what they're expecting their child to be. You can see it's a great list. I want this for my kids. My kids are both in their 20s. It's too late now. But it's interesting about this. This is what I want. Things like this. This is their expectations. All right. I was married for close to 9 years before we had a kid. I don't remember it. I do remember finishing sentences, and I remember eating what I wanted and watching what I wanted. I do remember those three things. But it's interesting about this. But it's a time, and we had a great time. We still like each other, and we're still married. So I'm very excited about this. But this is our expectation. This is the reality. This is the reality. And when parents start living the reality, you need to pay attention. They had years of expectation. And when we're dealing with things, they're coming to you making demands and asking for things. They're living a reality that is very different from what they expected. So keep this in mind when parents are making demands on you, that you need to treat them with respect. And I can't tell you that enough. Okay, so there I am. That's my email address. If I change jobs, you can still contact me there. So that's it. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Smith right now. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you do. So thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to him.
Well, thank you, David. And good afternoon, everybody. One thing I'll share before I start sharing my screen is some of you may know, well, I'm a faculty member here at the University of Kansas. I'm at a school right now, so it might be a little loud as some students walk by, but I'm also a parent. I'm a parent of 4 children, 2 of them, one with a 504, one with an IEP. And I can tell you that, one, I've had some phenomenal teams. I'll show you a picture of one of the teams here in a few minutes. Unbelievable, dedicated people like yourselves. But honestly, listening to David's presentation and the language not to use, I've heard it. I've heard it not only in my IEP meetings, but I'm in countless IEP meetings across the country. I've done a lot of virtual IEP meetings actually for the state of Pennsylvania for parents of children with Down syndrome. My son has Down syndrome. And sadly, I hear a lot of what David's talking, not just in Pennsylvania, but across the country. And honestly, in some of these meetings, I've face-to-face, I've done my professor mode, and that is, it's a teachable moment. I'll just talk to the people about, why did you just do the following? I'm not sure if that's my role, but I can't, I'm a teacher. And what I'll find is oftentimes we're just unaware of it. We didn't realize that we're all sitting on one side of the table and the parents on the other. We didn't realize that we just said, and so we're busy people. So just wanted to kind of, again, reinforce the wonderful work you're doing, but also sadly at times, some of the challenges we're facing, just that awareness. So David, thank you very much for reinforcing that. David or someone, if I can get a reinforcement that you're seeing my screen, that would be great. Recent webinar I was doing, David, can you see it?
I got it.
Great. recent webinar I was doing, I was going to town, and about 5 slides in, finally someone spoke up and said, Sean, we can't see your screen. So, all right, so we have a few minutes together. One of the questions, so today the questions we had 2 questions related to that overview. And one was the digital tools and strategies educators use to effectively communicate and collaborate with parents and caregivers. All right, so first of all, we've talked some about this throughout 2021 in these scenarios. I just want to reinforce going back to some of those, not only what David and I shared, but also I know what Ethan and Sarah have reinforced that's happening within PaTTAN resources. So of course, we're touching upon a few things. I'm actually going to reinforce some things from the past, but also realize this has been a conversation that we've integrated in throughout many presentations and opportunities throughout the last year. So back to the question, what digital tools and strategies are effectively communicate and collaborate? So for me, I'm just trying to get through here we go. Oh, what's happening? So for me, one of the things I want to start with is as I think about these tools and strategies to effectively communicate with, of course, parent and caregivers, I think of the family. And as AJ mentioned, instead of talking about parents, they refer to it as a family, because the family could be grandparents, aunt, uncle, could be a variety of other individuals that are representing that family aspect. But one of the things that I want to reinforce is that there's some really good information that maybe some of us had and maybe some of us didn't have way back in, or maybe recently in our pre-service or graduate work. But there's some really good information about the family life cycle. And to me, that's kind of a critical component. One, as a parent, and maybe many of you as parents, you've lived it, okay? Oftentimes we may not be able to say where we are in that family life cycle, but in appreciating that life cycle and appreciating where we are with our children, we can make some of those connections. Why am I mentioning this? Well, to me, realizing and appreciating it might help us in our communication and collaboration. I know as a non-parent early on in my career, working with a lot of students with special needs and their families, I did not make connections that as I became a parent was like the light bulb went on and oh my gosh, I wish I could go back and have conversations with those parents again. I wish I could communicate with them in a way that I was not communicating with previously. That was inappropriate. It's just, it wasn't thorough. I wasn't making connections and things of that nature. There are some very good resources on this if you're unfamiliar with it. I've linked you to a book here. The Peel Center has some good information on it. Transition Coalition has some really good information walking you through elements through the life as they transition into the post-secondary from the frame of reference to the family. And this is hyperlinked to a nice little piece from Turnbull's, Ann and Rudd Turnbull, former colleagues of mine. Rudd was actually the advisor for David's dissertation years and years ago, if I recall. And they've done a lot of work in this area. And so just a brief reference and a resource to that. I've linked in the chat my Google Slides. You can take a look at that at your leisure. In addition, if you want to know more about parents and that connection to parents, there's constantly more information being provided by a number of entities. Yes, the Peel, I'll mention Peel Center here in just a moment, but Parent University is something that is developed over the pandemic, which I think they've done a really good job there down in Florida. But there's also a number of different resources here that we should be aware of to better appreciate and understand that family. We're trying to better appreciate and understand lots of different things. I know we've got a lot of balls in the air, but to me, some of these resources might be the fact that become very efficient and effective in our understanding to be able to then be very, very helpful in those IEP meetings. And of course, or those meetings or interactions, general communication we're having with our parents. So these are hyperlinked. I just want to make you aware. First of all, many of you are familiar with the Peel Center, but you may be unfamiliar with the fact that we are actually part of the state of Pennsylvania, part of a region that also includes several other states. And why do I mention that? Well, sometimes as a region, we'll create resources that will benefit not only the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but also the other states that are in that region. Why South Dakota is there, I do not know, but there we go. But in that also we have, as you go into some of these resources, so for example, you click on Pennsylvania, they'll make reference to a couple other resources besides just the Peel Center, which is a PTI center for the state, that offer information for us as Pennsylvanians in respect to our parent connection. So just make you want aware of that. That's a link there to state parent training centers. I have another link there to family engagement about experts there. This is off of a PBIS center that did a really good job out of Florida, actually, in connecting with virtual learning and parent support when it comes to behavior, both in the classroom and at home. And that would be, of course, enhancing also the communication process. So they look at it from the educator perspective and a parent perspective for that. Understood offers a wonderful resource about how to better understand families through the PTI centers as well. There's some wonderful resources. This is out of actually Department of Ed, where they have done a really nice walk in using data and using scholarship and using research on ways to engage families. So yeah, this isn't necessarily the tools and technology, it's rather understanding and appreciating how we engage and interact with families. And oftentimes it's something that's kind of low on the preparation list, and it's low on what we get reinforced with. But since we're talking about it, wanted to make sure you understand there are a bunch of resources out there for us. But what about those digital tools, Sean? Okay, so let's get into some of those digital tools. And to me, feel free in the chat as we're talking. I know many of you have some phenomenal tools you're using, be it at the building level, at the district level. It may be some things that were shared with you in other places. So urge you, feel free to share as we go along, not only the tools, but also strategies to better communicate, collaborate with those family members. So feel free to offer them in the chat as we go along. But of course, if we're thinking about communication, collaboration with family members, we tend to think about what David was emphasizing earlier, and that's the IEP process. And of course, to me, this is a bit of a silver lining. And that is, I believe the pandemic, and maybe silver lining is a parochial term, but I believe there's some positives coming out of the pandemic when it comes to the IEP, because I think, as Dave was emphasizing, I know there's been resources created. The OSEP tip sheet is a great sheet. I'll give you a visual of that here in just a few minutes. It was created by a bunch of entities, Office of Special Education Programs, brought it together. But to me, when I look at that, it's like, wow, that's a great way to facilitate communication with parents, separate from the IEP meeting. Great way. And these are great tools to think about. So visit over there. There's a phenomenal podcast that walks you through ways to facilitate an IEP meeting virtually. But I want to break it down into 7 different things. 7, not 6, 7. And the 7, and if you've been with me in the past, I've actually emphasized these things. I want to add a few tweaks to them as I talk about it. But first of all, David was mentioning the aspect of sharing information. And there's so many tools out there we know now that we can share information. It may be through your IEP platform, but it also may be through another platform that your school is using because it's secure and private and controlled. And all we need to do is ask to say, can we actually use that to share information as well, like the LMS? I get a lot of information from my child's LMS currently when it comes to data, when it comes to not only information about how she's progressing, but where she is. All that is in a secure location with the LMS that I sign into as a parent, that's been given to me, that I asked for, it was given to me, and I can then better understand my child on a daily basis. So why wouldn't we use that platform to share calendars, send announcements, provide information that we find is appropriate from the district perspective in a digital format? Number 2, of course, web conferencing tools. We tend to use what we have. I'm going to talk about those in just a minute, but utilize draft agendas. And what can you send? And David, that was a question you might want to check on the chat here about what can I send digitally? What can I not send digitally? I think David's going to reinforce the fact that if it's secure, it can be fairly broad, although maybe our district is interpreting that a little bit differently. But you know what? When I think about districts and their interpretations, I think of my first year teaching. I think of that room where there was a bunch of silver cabinets that were padlocked, and they had one of those rods that went down and basically locked all those cabinets. And I, as a case manager, was not allowed to go in those cabinets and take a look at the IEPs of my children, because I wasn't allowed to do it, because that's not appropriate. I can look at the IEP meeting, but I can't look at past IEPs. And it was hogwash. But it was the interpretation of the director I worked under that felt it needed to be lock and key. And the reality was that that's not what the law said. And so where I'm going with this is maybe some practices going right now because of people fear with the digital aspect, they're coming up with rules that may not necessarily be appropriate and correct. And we can use a venue so who do you pursue? You pursue people like David to get an understanding, but the digital technology is really allowing us to communicate and share with family members at a level we haven't been able to do. I am going to run out of time. Remember, this resource is there for you, but I'm going to quickly go through some slides. Of course, maximizing that video conferencing tools will allow lots and lots of different variables. But number 7 is what I want to stop here for a moment, and then I'm going to move on beyond the IEP. One is, my goodness, let's think outside the box. I might be doing face-to-face, but I could bring in someone remotely. Of course, many of us are doing that, but why not even do more of that? And it may be for that limited period of time that they can access this. I think of that adaptive physical education teacher that has a caseload that is just tremendous, that's across 3 buildings or 3 levels of the building, elementary, middle, secondary, maybe countless buildings. They never are able to attend IEPs, but maybe we can get them a video conference in their car as they're heading to the next site. It may be the fact that we involve other people at the IEP meeting, the student supports, maybe a tutor that's working with the child. It may be the fact that the child is case manager due to waiver supports. It's never at the IEP meeting, but we can bring him in. Or maybe we videotape elements of the strengths of the individual or challenges the individual is seeing, not only in school, but in the community. And we share that information. It may be the fact that we bring in a videotape of a speech and language pathologist giving an update because she's running into another meeting as well. So it could be a lot of different things that we're using that outside the box with this new technology can really improve the IEP meeting. Okay, so how do you do it? Well, first of all, I mentioned that resource that OSEP offered, and you click here, it'll take you to that resource. It was created by a group of individuals, a group of entities. But Wisconsin also is a great state. It's a state, whether it's a great state or not, I don't know. It's a fine state. But what they've done is they put together some nice information about checklists for a virtual IEP meeting and the like, and they have some nice parts down here. I know other resources have that. The Commonwealth has resources like this. I particularly like this one, so I wanted to emphasize it, all to help us think about these virtual IEP meetings, the various tools to use, and the ways to communicate and the like with our family members. Okay, so David, can we record it? Can we record the IEP meeting? Is that something that's possible? If you're still with us there, I know you may be doing some other things, but if you're able to maybe put that in the chat, that would be awesome. All right, so let's think about though altering the model just a bit in the IEP with the communication collaboration. Now that potentially we are supplementing with some of these tools, we're engaging more people. We're able to, because of digital materials, we're able to share maybe some of the information we normally would focus on the IEP meeting. We're able to get some of that information prior to the meeting. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility is where I'm going. So here's a picture of smiling faces, 17 of them at Nolan's last IEP meeting a few years back. And so, wait, I got all those people together. How'd that work? And wait, they were there together for 45 minutes. And wait, they were able to all share and they were able to all problem solve. And wait, we got an IEP meeting that was right. And the administrator, who is the gentleman there in the black polo, said, yes, we're good. We're ready to roll. And we did all that. How did we do that? Well, we used the MAP process. And that to me, when we open up more of these digital resources, and I have mentioned this a while back, in a previous presentation, so I don't have time to review it any extensively, but there's some links here. There's a phenomenal video, 30 minutes that walks you through it. But I lived with this 4th grade on with my son's process. We developed IEPs through the MAP process, all within 45 minutes with the largest group with 17 different professionals, but they all shared, they all brainstormed, and take a look at that video, it gives you an example. That picture there is actually what we developed in his 3rd or 4th grade. I have it hanging in my office. It's framed because it was such a phenomenal process. So here's a parent that I could tell you that the war stories and the battles and the wounds, and yet this process became a very pleasurable and exciting process annually because of the MAP process. Okay, so we're gonna move on to wait, Sean, what are some other tools? Okay, so let's think about some other tools. So when we think about that, the second question was empowering parents and caregivers when we're supporting that hybrid and virtual learning environment. So with that said, I always go back to video. Why? Because video has really become at warp speed a technology many of us, if not all of us, are using. Maybe we're not using as efficiently as we'd like, so I want to reinforce some things. There's a link here that takes you to a great deal of resources on how to use instructional videos in a very academic way for a variety of learners. So I'll let that go as you get a chance. But in terms of communication with parents, so if we're using instructional videos already, which many of us are, we're using video for a lot of different purposes in our classroom, to facilitate the online learning, et cetera. Why wouldn't we use it with our family members? Why? Well, we use it to give them step-by-step supports. We give them explicit instruction, how-to information, things like this one. This is a video, take a look at your leisure. You'll look at it and go, well, wait, this is a teacher explaining how to do subtracting mixed numbers to her students. Yes, but this is something a parent can watch to understand, to then support and tutor their child when they're trying to complete their homework, or maybe when they're trying to complete their virtual work. The parent can go back and watch that, take a look at that, and do it at 10 o'clock at night and be able to support the child the next day. So if we're going to do it for instruction, why wouldn't we do it for modeling strategies? Why wouldn't we do it for directions for a large assignment? Why wouldn't we do it for breaking down what we want you to model, mom and dad or family member at home? Why wouldn't we provide videos of that? And those videos could be used by so many different stakeholders, the student, the family member, paraeducators working with them, maybe the tutor, the educators working with them face-to-face as well. And of course, in that instance, then there's so many things we can share about strategies, but I'm gonna move on here. So for example, strategies that might be very helpful to illustrate that I can empower with the child. So the SRSD writing strategy, really effective, very evidence-based. Here's a 3-minute video, actually I think it's 2.5, that walks you through what the SRSD strategy is like. It's great for a paraeducator. It's great for a teacher that doesn't know it. It's great for a mom or dad, a grandma and grandpa that doesn't know it. It's great for a student that's trying to become empowered in their writing, and it's great for a 4th grade on. And so this is the type of thing when using video now, I'm empowering mom and dad, and grandma and grandpa, I'm empowering the child, I'm empowering other educators. So for example, in addition, we don't need to watch that one, but in addition, there's so many other strategies we could employ. I'll talk about some in just a moment, but how do I create those, Sean? Many of us are already doing it, but Screencastify is a great tool to do it. It allows you to capture my screen, edit my screen, et cetera. Yes, many of us are already there. Okay, well, what about behind the video in terms of offering, in terms of adding in assessments, monitoring engagement, video and editing at the max level? Here's another video that takes Screencastify and brings it to the next level. Those are increasingly becoming more and more mature and easy to use. These are things that pandemic has created. And that, oh yeah, we have video editing there. What, now you want to see data, and you want to see data in a dashboard from the video you're using, and you want to see how to further engage the individual? Oh, and you want to ease your editing tool? We've got it. Why? Because we know more and more people are using it. Then we can create these videos for our educators, educators can create them for our family members to communicate better with, to engage them better with, and of course, support the students we're serving. Those are all videos that I've linked to. Here's a great video of how to make effective videos for learning. Here's 3 other tips and tools to improve the way not only you use video, but how you can edit video and ways people are using video in their classroom. So lots of different examples there. Here's a great educator. I've used her several times. Pocketville Primary, where she shares lots of different examples. And this one, she talks about how she uses editing to teach in terms of video, lots of different ideas there, and a number of apps that do that. And the list goes on. Okay.
Hello there.
Hello. I'll let you two guys talk to her later. Here are a variety of different resources I've shared in the past when it comes to not only editing video, but how to use video in your instruction. But more importantly to me is how to use video to connect with parents. So with that, there's a variety of different resources there to connect with parents. I'll get to that in just a moment, but here are step-by-step guides to be able to facilitate as an educator, not only the audio, but also the video between home and school communication plus. Here are just general technologies that many of us are using to also connect with home school for that collaboration and that communication. Yeah, old school Facebook. It's literally old school is Facebook, using your Facebook to connect with family members. That's so 2 years ago. That's so 2020. Now, of course, we're enhancing that with so many other tools that I want to make a reference to here in just a minute, because I only have a couple minutes. Okay, I mentioned more a moment ago in terms of strategies. There are so many resources out there that show us proven strategies that we want to empower our learners with. These are the types of things that we could model, create videos of to model. We could create different types of tools to be able to supplement, to support, and then get the parent family member to understand and get the child to understand, independent of us in a way, to further facilitate their ability then to use. So for example, Intervention Central is awesome in breaking down easy reading, math, writing interventions. They offer step-by-step types of things that they're very digestible to a lot of different stakeholders. The Cult of Pedagogy offers lists of effective strategies. Again, very digestible to a variety of individuals. Teaching Leading, David Bateman's been critical to this, as well as several of my other colleagues. They have a whole list of alerts. Now, they're evidence-based, and yeah, there's some scholarship there, but more importantly, they take you through step-by-step of strategy we know work with students. So you take these and you offer these as examples, links, other experiences that individuals could then utilize in their own learning environments, and we empower the family member through modeling, et cetera, to take these and facilitate with them with their students, with their children. I am running out of time, and I'm trying to get through a couple more things. This is a site that basically takes you with a proven writing strategy like SRSD with technology and shows you video examples and step-by-step guides, things I can share with mom and dad, grandma and grandpa, to then facilitate with the child, and also share with the child to further empower them at a distance to those strategies. All right, There's so many other tools to consider. Basically, I'm going to run through a bunch of slides to simply share. These are tools I'm giving you as a resource. Now, this is for pay, but it's a phenomenal. It's from the Cult of Pedagogy. It's about 550 pages of walking you through not only the tool, but how to utilize the tool, both for us, but also to communicate with the educator, so the family members at home. These are communication apps that oftentimes we use with our, they're created to interact with home and our parents. Many of us know those. And by the way, I've given you a hyperlink here to a whole list of them, as well as 4 directly that many of you are probably familiar with, but they're apps that automatically, with calendar updates, automatically share information, ping us, remind us via apps that we can share. And many of these are apps that we don't necessarily need to provide our phone. So therefore we're interacting on our phone, but no one knows our phone number. So they're protecting our information there. I'm running out of time. I've run out of time. I have a minute left. I know Sarah and Ethan want to share things out, but I just want you to know, guys, there's several links here that I was going to talk to you about various ways of communicating with family members and resources, but they're there on that PowerPoint I put in the Google slide, in the chat, and I'm stopping sharing, and I'm going to let Ethan and Sarah take it from there.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Bateman and Dr. Smith. And I know this hour just really flies by so quickly. So I just quite quickly, it's almost 3, so almost 4, I mean. So as mentioned, the slides and resources, all the links are now available in our share notes doc. And the recording will be posted shortly. So please make sure that you check that out. Thank you again for our presenter to share so many great resource consideration and strategies. I do have a few something really excited to share with you. For our next month, our March session, we are hosting a special event instead of a regular 1-hour webinar. So this event will be 2 hours long, which will consist of a general session and 3 rounds of lightning talks. And Dr. Bateman will share with us regarding the latest policy and special ed law during that general session. The lightning talk, we call them lightning talks, are focused breakout sessions facilitated by our consultants from various PaTTAN initiatives. You can see a lot of initiatives are involved that will allow you to explore some resource strategy and opportunities for professional learning and technical assistance that PaTTAN is offering. So registration right now is available at our PaTTAN website. The link is in the shared notes doc. So as we wrap up the hour, please make sure that you submit your attendance for A48 credit or ASHA credit. The link is in the chat window. I'm going to post that again to you. The code for ASHA credit is already included in the attendance form. You will see that when you submit it. Then whether you do it at this moment or you need to run out the door, please take notes of that link. For the attendance, we leave our attendance for open until the midnight. The full link is in the chat window. You can also use the tiny URL or the QR code on the screen. They all go to the same form. As mentioned, we do have virtual office hour. This month is scheduled for February 15, 3 to 4. And we are so excited to see you next month for our March 17th special event from 2 to 4. Again, it's all about connection and community. Lightning Talks registration now is available online at our PaTTAN website. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. I will see you next month. Thank you, everyone.